It's supper time with Meat and Potatoes, a podcast by Embrace, where your journey is our journey.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Meat and Potatoes podcast. So tonight we're going to just jump right into our hot topic and our hot meal, and it's when do I know enough as a convert? And so I'm Brother Rashid from New York, Embrace in New York, and my co-hosts are Brother Kenneth from Dallas and Brother Rashid from Sacramento. Say hi to the peoples. Say hi to the peoples.
Assalamualaikum, people.
Delicious. I'm looking forward to sharing this delicious meal with you guys tonight. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Absolutely. So I picked this topic because it's a topic I thought about a lot for myself, and I know other converts think about it as well. It's like, when do you know enough? And, as a part of our deen is about learning. You got to learn the prayers. You need to learn Arabic. You need to learn the hadith. You get to know the Prophet through a seerah. And it's a lot to comprehend, a lot to take in. So at what point do you say, I know enough, and you're comfortable enough to relax and be your total self? So I've dealt with that myself, but I want to hear how you brothers, your experience was. So how about you, Brother Kenneth? I think you're the newest Muslim in the troop tonight.
Bismillah. Newest in terms of Islamic years, and I guess in terms of physical years too, right?
Oh,
yeah, I'm still. Though it's funny I say that. Yeah, I'm the baby.
Yeah.
but very. It's a very good question, Brother Abdur-Rasheed. When do I know enough? And there's really so many ways you can go about that question. So I think I'm going to highlight two ways. The first is you ask the question, when do I know enough to where I can feel relaxed? And the proper answer to that question is never, which sounds scary, but I'm going to give some, I'm going to elaborate as to why I'm saying that. So when we look at our ulama, our scholars, those who we consider our teachers, even the most knowledgeable of them consider themselves not scholars, but students of knowledge. Most of them. We can even think of the most knowledgeable, influential American imams here in the U.S. Most of them will tell you, I'm a student of knowledge. Very rarely will you find a scholar saying, I am a scholar. Most of the time, they will say, I'm a student of knowledge. And usually the ones that say they're a scholar, they're not really scholars. Usually that's how you can tell if someone's a true scholar, if they're saying they're a student of knowledge. And the reason why so many of them say that is because they understand that the more that you learn, the more that you realize you don't know. And there's always something to learn. You're never going to know enough to where you're like, Alhamdulillah, you know what? Alhamdulillah, all praise to God, I'm good. I'm at a good point where I am like confident and that I do not need to know anything else to get better at this deen. If you're telling yourself that, you're fooling yourself, because the fact of the matter is, our entire goal in this life is to better ourselves and better our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that, of course, includes learning, right? And so you should never get to a point where you feel like that you know enough. You should always strive to know more, to learn more about your religion, about life in general, of course. We should always strive to be a better version of ourselves, better Muslims we are today than yesterday, and so on and so forth. But this goes into my next point, and which is, when do I know enough to be Muslim? And this is where I say, take what we said before, that you never know enough, and understand that it is a marathon, not a race. It is a marathon, not a race. You do not have to learn everything all at once. You take your time and learn at your own pace. If you really want to know how much do you need to know for you to be Muslim, it's very simple. You know that Allah is the one and only God, and we worship him alone without any partners. He is perfect and unique in all his attributes. He is our creator, our master, and we worship him alone. And that we learn about him through his book, the Quran, and through the teachings of his final prophet, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. That's all you need to know to be Muslim. If the question is, when do I know when to be Muslim? Knowing that, alhamdulillah, then that's enough. Now, of course, there's 6 articles of faith which kind of come into that, which we can discuss at a further point. But essentially, once you know the 6 articles of faith, once you know, Allah is the one God, the one and only God who we worship alone, and that Muhammad is the prophet, then you know enough to be Muslim. And so that's in first and foremost. And I'll stop there. And I think throughout the discussion we'll talk about like kind of the perception that we get with our born Muslim brothers and sisters about when we know when to feel like we're on that level. But inshallah, we can elaborate on that later on. I don't want to take up all the time, so I will pass the fork back to you, brother Abdur-Rasheed.
So that was beautiful, brother Kenneth. That was very, very heavy there. So I'm going to pass it on to brother Rashid. What's your take on this?
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah. I agree a lot with brother Kenneth mentioned, and want to just further say that knowledge is cradle to the grave. We never ever stop wanting to learn. And one thing about this beautiful religion, and one reason I love this deen so much, is that Islam is like an onion. The more you peel back, the more depth there is to it. I mean, we can even look at the prayer, and in and of itself, there's a few small amount of actions that are in the prayer, but there's certain things that we say. And if we take each component of that, and we can go deeper into that later, but there's just more and more and more that we can actually learn. There's even surahs that we can add to our prayer, which will add more depth and help us to focus and to get into deeper into our prayer. So part of this whole thing is, for me, is the word contentment. When are we actually content? When are we happy? When are we satisfied with the amount of knowledge that we have? And when it comes to material wealth, there's a level of contentment that we should have. Once we have that house and the car and whatever other trappings there are in this world, there's a certain level of contentment that comes along with that, because we don't want to seem to be ungrateful. However, when it comes to knowledge and when it comes to wisdom, we should never be content. We should always be striving to know more and to learn more, and to not only obtain that knowledge, but ask Allah for wisdom. Rabbi Zidni Ilma is one thing we often say, Allah increase me in knowledge, but inside of that, we also want wisdom to come along with that. We want to be able to act upon those things that we've actually learned. So wisdom is also another part of that. And lastly, I'll say that part of this question is when do we know enough? It's like, when do we stop considering ourselves to be a convert, right? Because if you're born, right? And then, I don't know, maybe at 30 years old, you become a Muslim, you decide to take Shahada. Well, 20 years later, technically speaking, people are still going to want to call you a convert because you weren't, quote unquote, born into this religion. So at some point in time, we need to not consider ourselves a convert, but just consider ourselves a Muslim. For instance, I took my Shahada in 1998. So am I still a convert, or am I just a Muslim? And we deal with that argument a lot. And there's, things we can say on both sides of the fence. And I'm sure we'll engage that conversation as we go. But at some point in time, we need to consider ourselves just a Muslim and not a convert. And again, cradle to the grave. It never stops. We should always be hungry and willing to learn. And Allah knows best.
So real quick, before Brother Abdur-Rasheed, you jump on. I do like how Brother Rashid mentioned the whole convert label, so to speak. I respectfully disagree with Brother Rashid that we should stop calling ourselves converts. But that's another discussion. I think, guys, aren't we covering that in a future
You
episode?
are. I believe you are. So let's not.
So I'm
that.
looking forward to that discussion, brother Rashid. It should be a very good,
a nice
good
hot meal.
But,
yeah.
But what I do agree is when does the label New Muslim go away? And that I think is also something attached to the term convert. I think that is like a good question: is when does that term New Muslim go away?
So you both brought up great, excellent points, and so I'm just going to speak from my own experience now. So, like you, brother Rashid, I took my shahada some 20 some odd years ago, and peaks and valleys, ups and downs since then. But I know a lot of my problem was I never felt like I was part of a community. So I never was, and I never felt like I was learning enough to keep up with the Joneses, I guess, or the Muhammad's, whatever. So I always felt, I guess, because I was a convert and because I was new, that I had catching up to do. And when I couldn't grasp a certain thing, whether it been the Arabic language or whatever it was, I would, I'd beat myself up and then be down on myself. And then I'd be like, you know what, maybe this is just not for me. Maybe this is for the Arabs, right? But I came to, Allah opened my heart and my mind to let me know, like Brother Kenneth said, that this is a journey, right? It's not a dash. It's not a race. It's a marathon. And I always understood the concept of knowledge from cradle to grave, but at what point do you think you have enough knowledge to like do dawah or even to speak in front of people? Mm-hmm. And so I never felt like that. I mean, I don't know if I feel like that now. I mean, this isn't really a big scholarly discussion we're having a casual conversation. But I know there's other Muslims have felt the way I feel, and the only reason why I don't feel that way anymore is because I've internalized what you guys have said. I'm never gonna be, and I'm no matter what I do from now until I die, I'm never gonna be that scholar guy. I'm gonna always be a student of knowledge, always seeking knowledge, and it's really about me. It's like whenever I feel comfortable with where I'm at with my religion, but it's not like I'm competing with other people. And I think I used to compete with other people internally versus externally. So, how did you guys ever feel that way? And if you did, how did you get over that hump?
Right.
You can go, brother.
So I absolutely agree with you that when you first convert to Islam, there's going to be some growing pains, right? You're going to feel like, you're a rookie around all these experts. But with me, in my experience, when I first started learning Islam, there are aspects that I didn't get that others did, like, how to pray and, how to pronounce certain Arabic terms and what have you. But the more that I learned, the more that I realized how little Muslims around me knew, because we have to understand that even though we may feel that we know so little, there may be many things that you as a convert who actually studied Islam, because many of us who converted to Islam, we converted after what? Usually after studying the deen, after, reading a translation or doing some research, reading a few books, kind of approaching it academically, so to speak, before we converted to Islam for many of us. And so many times when you first convert to Islam, there's a possibility you know a lot more than you think that you do. Maybe you're struggling with certain, saying certain Arabic terms or knowing how to get the prayers down. And you definitely have those growing pains. But with me, when I converted and I started realizing that everyone around me didn't really know what the hell they were doing either. I mean, that's just a fact. Many of our Muslim brothers and sisters today learn the religion culturally. They learn the religion through watching their parents or going to Sunday school. Many of them don't learn the religion by taking classes and sitting down and actually trying to learn it through academia or through lectures. And so most Muslims are like this. So number one, I think we have to give ourselves a little bit of credit when we convert to Islam, that you know more than you think that you do. you're not as behind as you think you are. You may be behind in terms of like the more ritualistic practices and the day by day things, like, how to pray, how to say certain Arabic terms, maybe certain rulings. But when it comes to the overall concepts, you may not be as behind as you think. And the more that you learn, the more that you're going to realize how little Muslims know overall. And that's when it's going to really come into making sure that you surround yourself with those who, whom you can rely on, those who not only are able to teach you, but are able to teach you authentically, right? Because I'm going to tell you, brothers, right now, I know you brothers know this. There are many Muslims who will try and teach you, and they don't know what they're talking about. This is just a fact. We're going to be real here. We're going to be really real here. That's just a fact. And so for me, what I had to be mainly careful was about not, when am I on the same level as my brothers and sisters? More of who can I rely on to give me accurate information? Because that's really, for me, was a bigger struggle than trying to get on the level of my fellow Muslim brothers and sisters. But again, that's just my experience.
What about you, Brother Rashid?
Yeah, and I agree. We need to sort of filter out those individuals that are going to be very helpful, but they're wise and they're smart and they know their deen. And sometimes, as a new Muslim, that's part of the struggle, is to figure out, what individuals can we rely upon, and that's something that we all realistically are going to kind of go through. But eventually we're going to find that person. But 2 quick points. I remember when I first took my Shahada, and like I said, in 98, shortly after that, I went on Jumat. That's when you sort of nestle with some brothers and you go and you visit other communities, and it can be for a full weekend or 40 days and whatnot, but you're out there on Jumat and just sort of immersing yourself in the religion. When I traveled down to San Jose, one of the imams down there said something that always kind of stuck with me. And it was like, even though you're new to the religion, you still have a lot to offer. And in that sense of dawah, I know how to communicate with those other people that are maybe of African-American descent or born here. So there's a lot of knowledge that we inherently have to where we can contribute to the community, where we can contribute to the growth of other people that maybe just took in their shahada at the same time that we did. And when taking classes, I was amazed to find out that, I was one of the only converts or indigenous Muslims that were there that was in this particular, and this was a prayer class, the fiqh of prayer, or the jurisprudence of prayer. And because I was the only American in there born, I assumed that everybody else knew a lot more than I did. But I was amazed at some of the questions they were asking. And they were all beautiful questions, not to throw anyone under the bus, but I then understood that they knew just as much as me and or less in certain spaces and certain individuals. So we shouldn't always assume that we are going to be the less smart of those people in the room, because as it was mentioned, we do our research before taking Shahada. We do study, we do read, and sometimes that knowledge can be of great benefit in those places. But again, I still want to lean back on the argument of, when do we consider ourselves a new Muslim or something else? When do we convert over to that realm? And we get stuck sometimes with that label put on us. And I know we're going to talk about it in future episodes. I won't dig too deep on it. But again, just find some individuals that are very wise and know the deen, and can articulate it to you in a good and trustworthy way, so that you will grow and never be content with who and what you are as a Muslim.
That's beautiful. So
always strive to be better. Always strive to be better.
So I like that you guys brought those 2 points up, that point up. And so I know for me, that's what I did. And part of that process for me was attaching myself to a group like Embrace that will help nurture you and help you along your journey. I think that's what everybody needs. And I mean, obviously Embrace is available to everybody, but we all, I think part of the solution or to rid people of this feeling is they need to attach themselves to a group of people who have their best interests at hand. And I think just for me, just in my mind, I think inside that group, there needs to be some other converts, reverts, new Muslims who've been down that road so they can help you guide you along the pitfalls. I know for me, I didn't have a lot of that. And so now I have it. And so now I feel, I hate to say this, but I feel more confident and more confident in who I am and where I'm at in my journey. Am I where I want to be? No, but I probably never will be where I want to be, because I mean, I want to be in Jennifer Dose with you brothers one day, and my knowledge has nothing to do with us getting there. So, you know, whoever's looking at this, any new Muslims looking at this, I want them to know that they need to build, create, find a community. And as we all know, Islam is not something you do by yourself. But what other advice would you give the young brother or sister converts to help them navigate their this idea of not knowing enough or not having enough knowledge?
So I just want to jump real quick back to answer that question, Brother Abdur-Rasheed, what other advice I would give to our recently converted brothers and sisters, or even our brothers and sisters who may have been, Muslims for years, but still, ask themselves that question. You may have been Muslim for 10, 20, 30 years, taking all these classes and still feel like you don't know enough. But here's what I would say. I want to go back to Brother Rashid said about the label, and I do agree with him wholeheartedly on the new Muslim part. When does the new Muslim label drop? And I'm about to say something again that's it's real, but it's gonna hurt. But here in Meat and Potatoes, we don't hold off on the hot sauce. We take off the cap and throw that all on the slab. We don't hold back on any of the spices. So we're gonna keep it real. The fact of the matter is, and this is one of the challenges of being an American Muslim convert, is the new Muslim label. It will likely never leave you to a certain extent. It will definitely leave you with a community that you've connected yourself with and that knows you and that you've been a part of a very long time. But whenever you go and visit a new community or meet someone new and they find that you're a convert, they're going to more than likely consider you a new Muslim. I'll give you guys an example. When it was at a convention, I was a couple of years ago, and we had an embrace table, and I was talking to a brother, and I was telling him about why Embrace was around. And I asked him a question. I said, would you consider somebody who converted to Islam 10, 20 years ago a new Muslim? He said yes. He said yes with a straight face. That even if after 10, 20 years, he would still consider them a new Muslim, which that doesn't make any sense, because would you consider me at that point? You're like older than many Muslims today if you've been Muslim for as long as Brother Rashid or Brother Abdur-Rasheed, and yet they're considered new Muslims. It's this mindset. Many times when someone finds you you're a convert, they think, oh, do you need to learn the prayer? Do you need to teach you this? Do you teach you that? And you're like, brother, I could probably teach you that stuff myself. But so unfortunately that stigma does exist. But here's the thing, and this is where I go into the advice. We cannot let that stigma stop us from believing in ourselves, right? Because as we've mentioned before, you as someone whoever's listening, you as a convert to Islam, you weren't born in this religion. All right. This wasn't spoon-fed to you when you were born. This is not something you were raised with. This is something you had to learn from scratch. You took time to learn about this religion. to do research, and then you decided and you learned this was indeed the truth, and you made that step to embrace this religion, that in of itself is huge. And regardless of what anyone thinks due to their own ignorance, that you're a new Muslim because you converted, even if you've been Muslim for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, that doesn't matter. What it matters first and foremost is what you're doing is pleasing to Allah. You're doing it for the sake of Allah. Allah knows how much you know. Allah knows how much effort you put, and He recognizes you and sees how much value that you have. And those who truly get to know you know how much value that you have. Because the fact of the matter is, this is something that we're going to have to struggle with as converts, and we're going to have to fight against. Imam Sheikh Joe Bradford, he's actually a very knowledgeable scholar in Houston, Texas. Like, he specializes in Islamic finance, and he's written books going into deep dive about the Sharia of zakat and finance and all this stuff. But his name is Joe Bradford. And someone in one of his video, I think one of his comments posted, someone named Joe Bradford teaching about zakat, LOL. Because, his name was Joe Bradford. Joe Bradford? Someone named Joe Bradford teaching about zakat, Islamic financing? That doesn't make any sense. People are ignorant, all right? There's going to be ignorant people around you, and we're going to have to learn to deal with that. But don't let the ignorance of others make you think less of yourself. Like I mentioned before, knowing that Allah is the one and only God we worship, and that Muhammad is the prophet, knowing that is know enough to be Muslim. That is knowing enough. And when it comes to how much knowledge we want to know, we always strive to be better. You're never going to know enough. You're always going to strive to be a better version of who you are today.
Brother Rashid?
Yes, to a large extent, people are going to, because of your race, potentially, people are going to assume that you are a new Muslim and that you don't know very much. And that comes along with it. I've been Muslim over 20 years, and I still get that, where people want to assist me in trying to learn how to pray, or assume that I don't know certain things, not knowing, but they have no way of knowing that I've taken classes or that I've sat with other people. And people at the end of the day are just trying to share the best with you. And that's how I take their intention. They love Islam so much that they just want to share that with you, and they want to help increase your knowledge in this religion. But so we kind of have to get used to that. It comes along with the territory. But as it was said, to have confidence in yourself, know your game, know your deen, teach your family. And as far as some advice to give some of the new Muslims, some advice that was given to me, and I'll share that, was 2 books. There was a series of books called, it was the Tafsir of Ibn Kathir. It's about a 10-volume set. And these are books that teach you why certain ayats in the Quran were revealed. And also you're going to learn a lot more other things along the way. And it's an easy, simple read. It's not overly complicated. But if you're reading that book and sitting with some people that you trust, and next thing you know, you may end up with a reading circle with the Riyadh al-Salihin. I'm sorry, with the Tafsir of Ibn Kathir. But the other book that I really enjoyed was Riyadh al-Salihin, which is another book that sort of catalogs or categorizes different hadiths, which are things that the Prophet said, didn't say, did, and did not do. So those are 2 resources that I found to be very beneficial. And so when folks came up to me and were trying to educate me, even though I may have been Muslim for a long time, they're trying to educate me, we can then have a 2-way dialogue, because I've read something, I know something, I have some level of knowledge, whether I fully understand it or don't understand it, but at least we can have that conversation. And it's going to help to increase my knowledge about this religion. And those are 2 resources that I found were really, really, really beneficial. And the fact that this individual, Joe Bradford, and someone questioned him, that has to do sometimes with changing your name. And we covered that in another hadith. And some people will look at your name and just assume, again, that you know or don't know certain things. So we need to be a little bit careful. But at the end of the day, my advice is educate yourself, read, or get the audio versions of these things, and sit with people so you can build your knowledge and your confidence in who and what you are as a Muslim.
That's a great advice, and that you both gave. And so we're getting close to the end of our meal tonight. So I think I'm going to start pouring the coffee on this one.
Oh, alhamdulillah.
And
add creamer to mine, please.
Absolutely, we can have. I like mine dark and sweet. So my parting words, my parting advice is that a sheikh, I was in a class and he said, he was talking to us converts in particular, but it was a big group of us, and he was like, "There's so much to know, but you can't know it all, right? So pick any subject and study it. Study as much as you want, and then move on to the next one. You're never going to know all of it, but pick something. But your foundation is what? Your prayer, right? We all need to learn how to pray and pray as best we can, and develop a relationship with the Quran, whether you read it in Arabic or English, but you need to understand it so you can ponder on it, so you can learn from it, right? So if you use those two as your foundation, then everything else on top of that is your dessert, right? It's your coffee. It's because, like Brother Kenneth said, all you really need is to know is the Shahada, right? La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. If you know that and you believe that in your heart, that's enough. Allah knows that's enough, and we all want to die with that on our lips, right? La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. So with that little bit of knowledge is all you really need. So, but everything else is to help draw you closer to Allah, help you get to know your Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so you can love them both more and more and more and more and get close to them. So that's my journey right now. I'm trying to I read the Quran. I'm trying to learn the language, the Arabic language. But even if I don't become a master of it, I've read a Tasfir, I've read a Sirah, and people are always writing. Like, our Prophet is the most written about person in the world. Like, there's 100 million books you can read about him. You can read 10 different volumes of hadith, and it's only going to make you better, because it's only going to make you draw yourself closer to him and get to know him more and love him more. So, like you guys said, knowledge from the cradle to the grave, and you can't go wrong with that. I'll let you guys get in on this dessert.
All right, since I bought the hot sauce last time, I guess I'll try and bring something that'll satiate the heat a bit. So I guess I'll bring some cupcakes to this dessert today, and on a sweet note. So first and foremost, what Brother Rashid said before is absolutely right. That when a brother or sister does assume that you don't know something due to you being a convert, they of course have only your best interest in mind. They don't mean anything cruel by it. They just are excited to meet someone who's accepting the deen. It's very for them, it is very inspiring. Regardless of how much or how little you know, the fact that you accept is something inspiring for them. And so I do want to re-emphasize what Brother Rashid said, that even if that happens, we do need to keep in mind that they come from a place of love. And I guess my last point would be, again, to emphasize it's a marathon, not a race. Don't feel like that you have to get everything down. As we've already stressed time and time again in this episode, just knowing La ilaha illallah, there's no deity worthy of worship except Allah, and Muhammad Rasulullah, that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Knowing that and believing that within your heart, that is enough for you to be Muslim. You know enough right now, just having that. Everything else is just step by step, learning as you go. We all learn on different levels. We all know certain things other people don't know. Other people maybe know things that we don't know. None of us are, superior to the other in knowledge and everything. We're gonna have different varying understandings. So take your time, learn at your own pace, and always strive to be a better version of who you were before who you were yesterday.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Brother Rashid, you'll have the last word on this one.
Where's the bean pie, Brother Rashid? Bring out the bean pie.
You know, I got to bring the bean pie. bring that specialty.
That's
balance
right.
it out with other sweets and coffee, and bring a little pie. I think in conclusion, just to reiterate the point that we always want to constantly try to learn. We constantly want to try to increase ourselves in knowledge, and we want to try to not only benefit ourselves in that knowledge and in that wisdom, but also impart that to the family members and those friends and family that are in our immediate circle. But I want to stress sort of the three things. Number one, as a new Muslim, and even as veteran Muslims, spend and invest time learning the prayer, learning the fiqh of the prayer, the jurisprudence of the prayer, the ins and outs of the prayer, because that is your direct connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 5 times a day, you have an opportunity to have that communication and that conversation. And we want to refine our prayer to the best of our ability and get it as close as to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may peace and blessing be upon him, as we can. And then, as Brother Abdur-Rasheed mentioned earlier, pick something that you're interested in. This deen is so vast. It's like computer science. People say, I want to learn computers. Well, what part of computers? It's a wide open field. So pick something that you're interested in within the deen, and just grab some reference books and just dig deep into that. And go online and talk to your elders and the imam at your local masjid, and try to increase yourself in knowledge. But not only that, but impart wisdom into that knowledge and act upon it. And as long as we make the right intention, and there's different du'as you can make before you learn. And inshallah ta'ala, we'll get those things posted. But definitely tie yourself to a community and some other individuals, inshallah.
That was beautiful. I just want to, give the other disclaimer we always give out that, we're just 3 brothers. We're not scholars. Anything we've said that is wrong, it's to our own selves. And anything we said that did was right, all praise due to Allah. So on that note, I bid you all a farewell and the greeting of the Muslims. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Delicious dinner, guys. Delicious.
Meat and Potatoes is a podcast by Embrace. Embrace is a comprehensive convert care and empowerment organization dedicated to providing Muslim converts with social and educational spaces that encourage growth, shape their Islamic identity, and equip them with the tools they need for their lifetime journey. To learn more, visit us at www.embracereverts.org.